6 o'clock. Good evening and welcome to the regular meeting of the Recreation and Parks Commission. Would everyone please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance?
Place your right hand over your heart. Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Jackie, roll call, please.
Commissioner Watson. Present. Commissioner Stolnick.
Present.
Commissioner Lubes.
Present.
Vice Chair Davis is not here yet. And Chairperson Moda.
I'm here. Thank you. Presentations, are there any tonight? I see none.
No presentations.
Thank you. Public communications related to commission business only, and that is within the subject matter under the jurisdiction of the commission. Anyone? Seeing none, we'll close public communications. Consent calendar. Approval of the minutes of the Recreation and Parks Commission regular meeting of October 16th, 2019. Anyone?
So motioned. I motion approval of
Approval.
the minutes of. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
4-0. There is no unfinished business tonight. New business. Number 1, review and approve a Memory Row tree and bench donation policy that provides procedures and guidelines for accepting donated trees and benches that honor individuals or occasions, including the establishment of a set fee to cover the city's costs associated with the purchase and installation of the donated item. A couple of recommendations. Number 1, approve and or make changes to the draft Memory Row tree and bench donation policy. 2, make a recommendation to the City Council to establish the proposed fee for the purchase and installation of the donated item. Or 3, alternatively discuss and take other action. Meredith.
Yes, thank you very much.
Thanks.
So this item is in front of you. As you recall, we had an application a couple months ago to place a memory tree in Memory Row. And what we had available to us at the time was a policy for park donation memorials, but wasn't necessarily updated since in 2017 we absorbed the Memory Row program from Tree Musketeers. And so it's a long time coming, but we thank you for the prompt to get this done. And we think what's in front of you is a reasonable solution. Basically, Christopher had a conversation with Gail Church, the former executive director of Tree Musketeers, because we scoured our files and the city clerk's office, and honestly couldn't find a lot of documentation about the original Memory Tree program. So. But there's a lot of historical knowledge, obviously, with Gail Church, and Christopher found out some really great information that kind of led us in the right direction. We also looked at what other cities offer with their tree donation policies and bench donations. This is a unique situation because we have what we're proposing is 2 separate policies. One for the Memory Row area, in which somebody could apply to donate a tree or a bench. Both would come with a plaque. To honor a special person or occasion in their life. And what we're recommending with this is that there doesn't necessarily have to be a significant community contribution that we see in the other policy. The other policy is more geared towards putting somebody's name on the Friends of Recreation and Parks wall, maybe naming a specific feature or amenity within a park, or placing a bench that's maybe more prevalent of an area that's not necessarily a memory area or designated for that. So we view it a little bit different. There are already over 200 trees in Memory Row because that program has been in effect for quite some time. So what we're proposing is a draft policy in front of you, basically an application process in which somebody would fill out the required information, and it would be routed through the park maintenance superintendent and the director to make the approval or denial. That would be based on space available in the Memory Row area. Christopher can definitely chime in, but he and Santos walked the area and identified about 35 spaces where he feels comfortable that could fit trees. And that's somewhat flexible. We didn't necessarily map it out or place dimensions on anything, but that's them walking through the areas, making sure that there's enough space between the different trees to grow. And they've also selected certain trees that are more suitable for that location. So there are utility lines in that area, and also with the number of trees, they want to make sure that the space available, that we really maximize that with the type of tree that we select. So the applicant would basically have a selection of trees to choose from. And currently how we've been operating for the last 2 years is that the applicant, upon approval, would reimburse the city the actual cost of the tree itself, but we weren't recouping costs on the staff time associated with managing that application, installing the tree, which takes a couple guys to obviously dig the hole and prepare the site, and then add stakes and mulch and other materials that might be required to do so. So the recommendation that's in front of you would be an internal department application process. Like I said, it would differ from the already in place policy for memories in other areas. What we're also requesting is to take it to the next step where City Council would establish a set fee, that a tree would be $500, and that's an all-inclusive fee for the entire program, and a bench would be $1,400, and that includes the cost of the bench and the staff associated with administering it. So I guess I'll leave it open to questions at this point. Maybe if Christopher needed to add anything, you're welcome to do that. All right.
Okay, it doesn't look like Christopher has anything to add. Is that correct?
I'll just take questions.
Okay. Any questions?
Proxi-
Go ahead. Kelly, go
Approximately
ahead.
how many bench sites would be available, do you think?
Would almost be an unlimited number of benches right now. I think there's 14 benches right now. Most of those are associated with a particular tree, but yeah, we could place benches in some open areas and so forth. So
Okay, great. I know that Commissioner Davis, when we talked about this last, was concerned about how people would decorate these areas and that it would become more of a reminder of death than a nicely filled park with trees. And I noticed you said you took a couple of pictures. I also took a stroll down there and I only saw 2 trees that had anything around it. I recognize that he raised the concern about holidays, that there were more on holidays, but is it are we addressing his concern in any way with this policy?
Yeah, so what we did with the guidelines that the applicant would receive and sign that they agree to, we stated that decorations would be at their responsibility to remove them if they become deteriorated or in any sort of, any condition that is not aesthetically pleasing. And then we also put a line in there that the city reserves the right to remove any decorations that we feel might be hazardous or unsafe. So like, if somebody placed a flower pot, for instance, that has crumbled or cracked or something, and there's sharp pieces, then we would take the onus and remove that.
Yeah. Okay. I think it's a great program. It's a great compromise. It's too bad there's only space for 35 vacant trees. Is there, I guess it'll depend on what the demand ends up ultimately being, but are there other areas that we could then extend this program to? It'd be great to plant more trees.
well, we'd have to take a look at that. I mean, we could go east on the Imperial Highway,
That's what I was thinking.
take a look at some of the areas there, and so forth.
Great.
I think what is in the report also is, at least since 2017, we've received less than 5 applications a year. So it might take several years, unless for some reason it takes off, unusually. But if it's on the same trend going into the next few years, it's probably about 5
got
or less a
7
year.
All right.
That was my next question. I mean, how many did we get in 17? How many did we get in 18 since we took over for Tree Musketeers? And you answered that question, so 7 years plus.
Before
or more, hopefully more.
Yeah, and the reality is there are trees
Great.
out there that probably will be removed during that time as well, so spaces, it kind of could refresh a little bit.
Yeah, so I had a question. Up in the first paragraph where it talked about Tree Musketeers when they were doing it, that the criteria for a tree planting request included the cost of the tree, annual maintenance, and the honoree or applicant to be a community member. Do we not want the honorees to be residents or a community member?
I mean, the policy can be drafted whichever way the commission thinks is reasonable. We've had requests, and I think one of the most recent requests was a request from somebody here in town that wanted to maybe honor their mother that didn't live here, or something like that, but the visitor to the tree is a community member, so I think that's why it's either or.
Okay. And then the other question was, it's kind of subjective here where it says made a significant contribution to the community of El Segundo. So is it, you and Christopher are determining that significant contribution? Because, somebody may think that their contribution has been significant, and then we're saying, well, really, it's not. So how are we going to determine that?
That particular statement applies to the park memorial donation policy for the other areas. What we're suggesting is that be removed from the memory row
Okay,
criteria.
okay.
Do you see that particular somewhere that you wanted to point out?
it's in the
I want to make sure. It's in the body?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, so the point there, and maybe it doesn't read as well, but would be that would remain on the existing policy, but that would not be a criteria for the memory row
Okay.
program.
And since we are maintaining the trees once they have been planted, that means we're responsible for it. So if it dies, which trees have, then we're responsible to put that tree back in at the city cost.
We would remove it, and just like our other policy, we plant a tree anytime we remove it. This particular instance, it may not be in the exact location. Does that make
Okay.
sense? Christopher, is that how you see it?
Yes, and we do have data on the existing trees and contacts and so forth. So we have made attempts to contact people where the tree has died and removed, and sometimes we get a hold of them, and many times we do not.
And you do that just to let them know, or to offer them an opportunity to buy another tree? Or
Both.
And then would that plaque, does the plaque get removed? Or if the tree dies and you plant some, do you move the plaque over to the other tree, or does the plaque get removed?
Well, it depends on what we end up doing. If we replace the tree by the same folks, the plaque will remain.
Sure.
If not, we'll remove the plaque.
And then one last question, Christopher, I know we've talked about this several times at our Gateway Committee, that it would be nice someday to see a pathway go from Main Street all the way down to the end to Hillcrest. And if that were to happen someday, which hopefully it will, are you guys going to try to strategically place the trees so that we don't have to remove those trees if that pathway goes through? Just kind of looking, because, I mean, a lot of us on that Gateway Committee think that that's a great idea, and if the city has funding for it, to do a pathway through there, and you would hate to have to start removing trees to put in a pathway, so maybe if it can be strategically planned, the pathway and the tree planting, to where that could be done.
Sure. Actually, there is a CIP project right now, hasn't quite gotten kicked off, for a pathway in Memory Row. The plan is to go out there and walk it and see exactly where we want this to go. So that's in the works right now.
Okay. That's all I have.
Dave, anything?
Yeah.
Right?
Okay, so on the last point, so I have a lot of questions. So I'm sorry in advance. I don't want to come across as being against this idea. I definitely think it's an opportunity for us to beautify the area and plant a bunch of trees. And I think I look at it more as a beautification project than as a memory row project, because I think that's what is best for the community. These are individual plantings that are important to individuals, but the overall look needs to be for the whole community. And so that's the way I'm looking at this. And so with that lens, should we take a step back even and do an even bigger plan, like Julie's saying, and say, you know, let's take this really seriously, and if we're going to have a gateway arch and we're going to plant another, you know, 50, 60 trees, should we consider getting a design, a true design, and have the 35 spots, like have a real articulated plan? It's like if we just keep planning, it's gonna 30, 40 years from now, it's gonna look like we kind of planted them one at a time, and it may not be as nice as it could be if we slow down and not try to rush it.
Instead of they're just plunked in.
Yeah, I don't know. And then your path makes more sense as far as, you know, meandering would make sense anywhere. You don't want it to go straight, so it makes sense to be able to go around trees and do cool stuff. I don't know. I don't want to miss this opportunity especially if they're going to happen anyway and there isn't any real cost. I mean, I'm not suggesting we get a consultant to do a full one necessarily. It might just be your department sitting down and taking some time and saying, okay, let's design this thing right, and instead of, you know, letting the residents pick their tree necessarily, there might be consideration to, there should be kind of, you know, let's do these types of trees here. And I don't know. I feel like I don't want to pass this on and miss this opportunity, and then years later say, gosh, look at this, we could have done something more. I don't know. Thoughts on that first before I move on to the rest?
What I understand from reading this is they have a plan. And correct me if I'm wrong, that if they've picked out that they've got room for or chosen 35 trees, I'm hoping they know where they're going to put them. So somebody comes in and says, I want to, starts the process, and you're going to show them, hey, we can put it here, or we can put it here. I don't think the person choosing, starting the process is going to say it has to be in this spot here, because that's staff's choice where it should go. And that's when we did this for Kathy's dad through Tree Musketeers, and Tree Musketeers said it has to go here. We didn't choose the exact spot. So correct me, please.
No, that's true. And, you know, as far as a kind of a master plan, if you will, with the 200 trees out there, it's 95% already laid out. And one of the reasons we've highlighted just 5 trees now, one, they're smaller scale trees, they're flowering trees. We think it's a good combination with a lot of the evergreen trees that are out there. There's a lot of pine trees and some ficus and so forth. So we've got some deciduous trees, flowering trees, which we think will be a nice complement to what's out there right now.
So
Sometimes you walk in, you go into a parking lot and they have all the same types of trees, and it looks so nice to be organized. I mean, maybe it's just me being OCD, I don't know.
I think.
And maybe it's too late.
yeah.
Maybe there are so many species that it's too late.
Well, I think we've inherited a situation where had we done it from the beginning, had the Parks Department been more involved from the beginning, it probably would look different.
Let's cut all 200 down. Plant 200 new ones.
But that's not to say that regardless of this program aside, when the gateway comes to fruition, when the pathway comes to fruition, that can still include planting of trees that don't belong to this particular program. And if we feel that the pathway should be lined with all crepe myrtles, or maybe in that Main Street area, we do something decorative with landscaping or with tree planting, that's still an option. We can do that, and maybe it's not part of the Memory Row program.
Okay.
But I understand what you're saying.
Okay. I'm gonna jump all over the place. I apologize like 5 times. I actually, I do agree with Julie with regard to the memory row tree and bench donation policy. And I don't think this is gonna be received very well, but I'm gonna say it anyway. I don't think that we should be planting trees for people who don't live in El Segundo or don't have some demonstrated and reasonable connection to the community of El Segundo. I think it's odd to have plaques of people who've never lived here be in that space. That doesn't make sense to me for some reason. And I would propose that we change number 3 on that procedures and guidelines to read the person requesting the memorial item or the person being honored. Wait, am I on the right one?
Yep.
We have it as it's either or
Yeah.
currently, the person requesting or the person being honored.
So if it's someone, I guess you could live out of town and the person being honored. See, to me, it's the person being honored. It's not the requester. If there's Jane Doe on a sign who always lived in New Hampshire her whole life, it's weird to have a tree in El Segundo that says Jane Doe for that person.
It kind of makes it more of a cemetery kind of thing.
Yeah, rather than a celebration of El Segundo people. I don't know. I don't know how you guys feel about that, or if we can make minor changes, recommend, or do we need to vote? for something
Absolutely.
like that,
No,
or-
you can, if there's consensus, we can make that change. We recently, received a request from somebody in Florida who wanted to purchase a memorial tree for somebody here in the community. So that does happen. Probably more rare that it happens that somebody from the community wants to place a tree in honor of somebody who didn't live here. So I don't think that would be a huge change. I think that we do need to consider those instances where somebody's planting in honor of a birth or a marriage or a special event, because that happens as well. So I
So
guess
you're
you would say that
planting
the
it-
applicant would need to be
The applicant, yeah, so if it.
in that situation.
Yeah, same thing, if you're honoring a birth of someone who's in New Hampshire, I don't know if that really deserves, should be in El Segundo. I don't know. What do you guys think about that one?
Yeah,
That's why I brought it up.
If, I can't even imagine that happening, but if you're a huh?
Didn't it just happen? I thought
No,
the
no.
most recent applicant was someone who didn't live in El Segundo.
No, the requester lives in Florida, but the person is
Oh,
from
it was?
town.
I got it
Yeah,
backwards.
Yeah,
that was
the
just the
person was in
opposite.
El
Okay, sorry to
Segundo.
interrupt.
So, I'm a grandparent, and I got another grandson on the way, but let's just say they don't live here, but I do. Can I put a tree for the birth of my second grandson?
No.
He's saying no.
I'm saying
According to
no.
your-
Yeah,
according
I'm
to your
saying no.
rule.
Yeah, I'm saying no.
But I've lived here for over 60 years. Why can't I? Because my grandson doesn't live here yet. Okay, what's your thoughts?
That's where I thought the significant contribution to the city. But you're saying that those are the trees within the park,
Correct.
not within Memory Row.
Right, and in that instance, those applications would still come to the commission to evaluate what that.
Those are serious big wigs, yeah.
So, I'm interested in hearing what your thought is just to that, because then
Yeah. Well, because your time in El Segundo could be short, right? But yet still quite impactful, and yet it could be long in your case. And yeah, we don't know if your grandson's going to come live here or not, but you certainly do live here and contribute a lot. So I'm kind of torn on that one for that reason. I think it does make a lot of sense that the person that's being honored needs to be somebody recognizable as an El Segundo, which is why that would be a sound measure.
It would say Baby Moda, I'm sure. at least the name would be an El Segundo name,
Right,
right?
right.
No one would question the name.
Okay, it's not me, just it's someone else.
No, I
Right,
know,
right.
but
Someone else that
Right, who's been here a long time.
been here and they're a resident and they want to put a tree in town.
I think there's a lot of situations, like for instance, if somebody who was one time an El Segundo resident but left and then passed away, could they be honored in Memory Row?
I
So
say yes. I say yes to that. I'm
here's,
not sure.
here's another thing that might play into this that I was going to mention later, and that is, does a plaque have to be put in? Does a plaque have to be part of this? Could you, if you want to put a tree in to honor your grandson, why is the plaque so important? Isn't the tree the symbol and the thing for you? So could we do it where you can still do a tree or a bench, but not put a plaque maybe? But then it's important to you individually, but then the whole community doesn't have to? I don't know, that was another,
So the plaque is your problem
No.
or the tree? I'm not sure which, I need to know.
I don't have any problems, and I'm not,
And I don't mean it that
Yeah,
way.
yeah.
You know how I talk, so.
yeah, no offense taken, certainly. Because I brought that first point up, I thought that maybe if we say a plaque isn't required, that would, maybe we then could still allow your grandson to have a tree or a bench, it's kind of an in-between, I was trying to thread the needle, I guess.
So here's another thought. There are other opportunities in El Segundo for memorializing like a birth or something like that. There are the stepping stones down Main Street. There are the stones in front of the high school, the bricks in front of the high school. There are, and I'm sure aren't there plaques at the pool, things like that. I think a tree on Memory Row maybe should be about memorializing and should be about someone who was at some point an El Segundo resident. And knowing that if somebody wants to memorialize a birth, that there are other avenues for doing that in El Segundo. I realize that a brick at the high school is not the same as planting a tree, but there's 35 trees, it sounds like, you sort of want to not reserve them for something memorable, but it is Memory Row, right? Does that change anything?
How would you change number 3? How would you word the changing of number 3?
The person
Being on.
being honored should have a demonstrated and reasonable connection to the community of El Segundo.
Yeah.
That doesn't,
if
but
you-
you're going to say your grandson does have a
Right.
connection.
The words you used, leave it wide open, demonstrated and
Reasonable.
reasonable. So I just want to hear how you want to change it so it's black and white.
Does this policy still require that they come to commission and get it
We're
approved?
recommending that
This one
it
does
be
This one does not,
approved
right?
by the
This
staff
is-
so that it, when you start massaging all these different rules, then we have to go deeper into the application and do some more research.
Dave, I understand what you want to do. I just want you to do it.
I'm not sure I know how to do it. And
I mean, we can ask.
we don't have to finish this tonight either. There's no
We
rush
could
on
ask
this.
more
We
questions
could
on
ask
the
staff to come back
application.
and come up with the language, so I don't have to wordsmith it on the fly.
No, and I get it, but we should make it clear. Let's not leave it open to interpretation. Or we can, and then we can change whatever it is.
I think there's going to be a gray area no matter what that staff is going to have to deal with. Some people it's going to like, well, they lived here for 2 years. Is that enough? Okay. I mean,
But
they're probably going to have
they
to.
are a resident.
But
They were a resident for 2 years, right? So that makes it good in your proposed number 3.
I don't know. I haven't gotten that granular in my mind yet. I just wanted to talk about it. I really.
Okay.
That's where I was saying, like significant contribution is a subjective thing, so we do have to like nail it down, to where it's more definitive.
It's either that or it comes back here for every tree or everything. I think that's where you're going next, so go ahead.
No, I don't, I'm not trying to control that, for sure. If we're happy with this policy, I have no problem trees not coming back to us.
Go ahead.
This is our one chance then, right? I feel like we gotta get it right. I feel like you and I are on opposite ends, and these two are kind of in the middle, and I don't know if we need to take a vote, or if we need to,
Oh, I didn't say I was at the opposite. I just want it so I understand it. I can't understand it the way it's here, and I can't understand what you want. I just want you to tell me.
I want it to be, you know what I want, I don't need to say it.
I believe that, I think that, and I don't know why Lee's not here, but I think that we ought to push this to next month if we can, because Lee was the one that had brought this up and had an issue with, running through there and feeling like he was in a cemetery, And I think that he is going to have some ideas or some say-so as to this policy.
I'm fine with that. Can we ask for a couple versions for number 3 that might work based on
Sure.
what you've heard?
Yeah.
And then I'll continue with my,
Please, go ahead.
okay. I mentioned this before, and you said it wasn't an issue, but if you're going to do all these different types of trees and have one irrigation system, is there no concern with regard to that different types of trees take totally different than grass? And it's, I don't know, that's not a concern of yours. Still? Tell me no, and I'll cross it off.
No, it's not.
Oh, okay. Perfect.
We've been doing good out there so far,
Okay.
and,
Tree just remove it. All
and
right.
the trees have done well. The ones we've selected have done well in El Segundo.
There was one of them, the picture that looked like it might not be doing so well. Wasn't there? Marcy looked a little, was it Marcy? No, the one on the next page.
Since 1987.
Yeah, Marcy's been there for a long time.
The one on page 16 at the bottom looked a little bit like it was struggling. Regardless, okay. Are all 202 trees donated, or is that just the total number of trees?
Sorry. I believe they were donated.
Wow. 35 vacancies.
This was a fundraising program for Tree Musketeers as well. So they were either donated, there could be instances where this was the Arbor Day program in the beginning where maybe they're not all donated, but for memories. But yeah, it's all through the Tree Musketeer program.
On the Memory Road tree and bench donation policy, again, I go back to whether a plaque is required or not. The first line reads, "This policy provides procedures and guidelines for the acceptance of tree or bench donations with plaques to Memory Row." I would suggest that we just change it to with or without plaques to allow people the opportunity to do it without if they so choose. Would that be okay with you guys? Does that make sense to staff? Do you guys think that that would be okay? Not to
Yes, absolutely.
force them to do it. Most people are going to do it, but.
If somebody doesn't want a plaque, then, yeah.
They just
I would-
want a donated tree.
I wouldn't force them to have to put a plaque there.
Right, and I don't want people to read this policy and think, oh, we have to do a plaque too. No, you can donate a bench if you'd like. Okay, I'd make that suggestion. We already talked about number 3. I think that well, let me go to the pictures. Do these items on page 15 comply with this policy? Like, is this amount of decorations and like, is this something that each individual is going to be allowed to do around their tree to this extent? I mean, this looks like a lot. Is
Yeah,
this okay?
there are no restrictions as of now. And as the report stated, and I think Commissioner Watson mentioned, there's less than 5 that really decorate like this. There are no restrictions at this point, though.
And you're okay, are you okay with no restrictions on that? It's like one of those things that we'll solve it if it becomes a problem?
Well, I think the language is sufficiently vague that leaves it to the discretion of Parks and Rec. So
Okay.
I think that can solve it. I would encourage that we be as inclusive with our definitions as possible, because my only concern would be to put a non-inclusive lens on what is considered appropriate and what isn't. So just as long as we balance inclusivity with that conversation, then I think it's, leaving it sufficiently vague is probably the safest thing to do.
You guys all nodding? Okay. Again,
I mean,
I
one
always
way
think
to-
of the worst, like
yeah.
everyone's going to do it, and then it becomes a chaos, and
And then we,
then we dial it back and
Dial
have
it
to
back.
have stronger language and fix it at that point. Don't make an issue out of something that's not an issue, Dave? Okay. Back to the memory road tree and bench donation policy, I would recommend that we add an 11th item at the end. And maybe it's not an issue. See, here I go again. I just thought that there should be something that allows the city, or that says that if the decorations, kind of like number 10, but if the decoration, flowers, and attachments that are no longer in good condition are not removed in a timely fashion, the city would reserve the right to, obviously we'd go back to the person and say, hey, you guys need to do a better job. But at some point, if someone were to not do that, I don't think it should fall on staff to always be like, I get to put it here, and if the flowers go bad, so be it. Someone's gonna, yeah, they'll die, but his crew will handle it, is kind of what number 10 is. It's like
Right.
the city gets to remove it, but I don't think it should be their responsibility. I think it should be the person's responsibility. If you're gonna put something on a public land, you should probably be responsible for removing it. So to
Yeah.
allow the city
so you
that.
could say require removal of
Well,
any
what
decoration.
we're saying here is that it's the responsibility of the person who placed the items to remove the items when they're no longer in good condition. However, the city will remove items that are a hazard. I think what might be challenging is there are 202 trees there that if all of the ones that are there that are currently being decorated, we may or may not know who it is or the contact information. So as we review this policy, it's really the new ones coming in that we're going to be able to share these new rules with. We don't know what the old rules were. So, I mean, we can do our best to, with the database that we have, to send updates to these folks and say, hey, these are our new procedures. And that's the best we can do, really, other than being out there and trying to see when somebody's coming and catch them. Or
Okay,
I guess
maybe
you
it
could place
doesn't need that.
something on the tree itself and
And
a
again,
notice.
it's probably, it's not an issue at this point, so if it becomes one, then you can
Yeah, I
do
think
it, that's
the
fine.
real question is, do we sort of carry through with the program generally as it was intended under the Tree Musketeer program, or do we want to entirely change it and go a different route?
I'm in support of this. Again, I want to bookend this by saying I'm in support. I don't want it to come across like I'm not. I think it's an awesome thing that we can blend with the gateway, and it's needed upgrades forever. So it's awesome, but just don't want it to be an issue moving forward. That's all I have.
Christopher, Parks staff is out there daily, correct? Or almost daily, can I say?
Almost daily,
So,
between our staff and
I'm going back to,
maintenance contractor.
Good point.
so Land Care is who's out there also? Is that
Correct.
Okay. So if they see anything that's looking hazardous, or, I'm on number 10. I'm trying to get back to where we're trying to get to number 11. Somebody from park staff or Land Care is going to see it and notify you or someone and remove it if it needs to be removed, right? Something hazardous or is just ugly.
Vulgar, unsightly,
Yes,
any of those
exactly.
things.
Is that correct?
Correct.
Perfect. And that would be incorporated in number 10, correct? Perfect.
Should we add vulgar and unsightly to number 10? Just to allow greater latitude?
Well, I wasn't trying to get there to have, but they're going to take care of it.
Okay.
I think staff can handle that.
All right.
So with this policy, the donation policy, number 3 is what you want looked at, adjusted, and taking off the part that a plaque is required. Is that correct? Is there anything else that we want looked at? Did I miss something?
Nope, that was it.
Okay.
So basically, we can come back with some options for number 3, that with the full commission have more discussion about that.
And hopefully, Lee will be here at our next meeting, and we can get this to go, because this is great. I like it. So,
Yes, thank you.
with that, so the recommendation then, Dave, is to,
For staff to modify number 3, add language that doesn't require the plaque, and bring it back to next meeting for us to discuss.
that is your motion, right?
That is my motion.
Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That's 4-0 to bring it back.
All right, thank you very much.
Okay. Number 2, consideration and possible action regarding a request from El Segundo AYSO Region 92 to allow its annual All-Star Tournament outside of the youth sports field allocation policy from January 5th through February 18th, 2020. Recommendations: approve the request from El Segundo AYSO to waive the policy and hold the tournament. Let them hold the tournament. And 2, alternatively discuss and take other action related to this item. Meredith.
Yes. So the information is in front of you. This is a request you're familiar with. AYSO has been hosting their All-Star Tournament for several years. We have Sean Green, our recreation supervisor over the sports fields, and a representative from AYSO here tonight. And I would just ask them to come to the podium and answer any questions that we have.
Please state your name and your organization, please.
Sure, I'm Billy Whalen. I'm commissioner from AYSO. And
Okay.
Sean is Sean.
Hi, Sean.
Hi, Sean.
He's well known.
Do you have any questions for him? Anyone? Well, it's been approved every year. The only thing I have, Sean, as of the date this was written, there were no conflicts. Right now, there's no conflicts. Okay. The one thing I did see is the tournament says that there's all these cities, Westchester and all that, but it doesn't say El Segundo's playing in it.
El Segundo
Can
is
can
We
we
are.
can we
We are.
confirm that El
Yes.
Segundo will be playing in this
Yes,
tournament?
yes, we get teams in the
Okay.
tournament.
So
Absolutely.
we have all-star teams.
Absolutely.
Awesome. That's what I thought, but I just was something that just hit me. Why El Segundo wasn't listed?
Yes. Yep. We have one from each age group.
Any other discussion?
from each.
But 2 from each age group, right? Selective.
I move approval.
There you go.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Good luck, and bring some winners.
Yeah, just beat Manhattan Beach, right? That's the whole point.
Beat everyone. Okay, thank you very much, and thanks for being here. Number 3, consideration and possible action related to retaining a consultant to complete a study and provide recommendations which will enhance the City of El Segundo's transportation program. Three recommendations. Number 1, review proposed recommendation and provide direction or feedback. 2, direct staff to retain the services of a qualified transportation consultant. Or 3, alternatively discuss and take other action related to this item. Meredith.
Yes, Ericia will be providing this report.
Good evening, Commissioners. Over the past couple of months, you already know that the Transportation Committee has been meeting and trying to dive deeper into the transportation services that we offer thus far. The main focus we wanted to come up with is what group are we trying to serve? Who are we trying to serve? And basically, the entire committee agreed that we're trying to serve a population that cannot serve their need. They cannot find transportation getting from A to B, or they're having trouble finding transportation connecting to a service. Maybe it's a public bus or public transportation. So after further meeting, we started to discuss how our transportation services now mainly service the senior population. We do have lunchtime shuttle, we do have beach shuttle, but sometimes those services can be inconsistent because we are challenged with drivers and we're challenged with buses, as far as if someone has a Class B license or not. And sometimes those drivers fall into situations where they're not passing physicals, then we end up short staff, or our buses are down and we're short buses. Maybe we have 2 for that week, so we end up canceling services. So in our next meeting, after we pretty much went over the, I'm going to say the opportunities. I was going to say challenges, but I'll say opportunities. We came back to the next meeting and we started to discover that there are other things that we need to do. Maybe we need to expand some hours. Maybe we need to change bus routes. Maybe we need to team up maybe with a Lyft program or something of that nature. So it started to get bigger and bigger, great ideas, but we're not the professionals, right? We don't know what the city is going to need in a few years. The city of El Segundo is growing, so we can't just look at what the needs are now. We need to look at the needs of the future and what we're going to need down the road. So with this item, we came forward and we felt like the commission needed to hear whether or not we can actually go forward and possibly get a consultant to look at our transportation services, look at the needs of El Segundo now and in the future, and possibly come up with a program or something that will service us better and service the community better. So tonight we're just asking that you look at what we're proposing and possibly vote and say, yes, we can move forward with a consultant. If you agree, then our next step would be to go to council with this item.
You first. Anything?
I respect the work of our staff and our fellow commissioners and would support this 100%. Absolutely. I agree. We're not the experts, and we probably have to do surveys and all sorts of stuff that is beyond our capacity, so I'm full support.
Same with me. I was just wondering if we had an idea of what we thought the consultant may cost.
Yeah, so it really varies depending on what the scope of the work is. I think some initial conversations with potential consultants, coming in initially could be on a billable hour sort of a structure before we can define a specific deliverable or a project. So, probably in the range of, I think a few $1,000s, $5,000 would get us started, at least with a direction, and then we can understand what is that deliverable we want. Do we want to write an RFP to see who could operate our current systems in a more efficient or cost-effective way? Then we would have an actual project and a deliverable that we could seek proposals for. But initially, I know that there is council support for assessing the transportation program. They've discussed it at their strategic planning, and we can also keep our initial contract amount under a threshold where I can simply update the city council on where we're going with this, and probably not need approval until we have a real solid idea of what we want that consultant to deliver to us.
One other question I have, because it seems like, cities keep talking about, contracting with the county and contracting here and sending out, police services and all of this. This isn't something that we're looking into as to contracting out our transportation services, are we? I like the fact that we have, our local drivers that know people and, part of the community instead of servicing it out. So I was just wondering, is this something that we're looking to service out our transportation?
I think that's an option. I think that's going to be an option that we'll discuss. And there's a lot of ways you can do that. There could be a hybrid approach. You could contract out the drivers to drive city vehicles. You could contract out the entire program. The reality is that our program's so small that it'll probably be hard to find a more cost-effective operator to operate it without it combining with another service in the general area. But that's what we need to explore, really, we need to understand and assess our current operations what's working and what's not working currently before we make that decision.
Okay.
And not to interrupt, and also just discover what the possibilities are. I don't think we know everything, and I think someone that's a professional in the field able to give us that information would help us in the long
Like,
run.
I was surprised here on the Dr. Dial-A ride that it's only on Thursdays. And I was wondering, what's the average number of riders that we have on that Thursday? I would think that, you know, that service could be, you know, increased. You know, I don't know. So I was just surprised when I was reading through some of these things.
So if I could, because I've been driving a lot of this from the Transportation Committee, we really don't want to go in with a bias one way or another. I think the reason we want to hire an independent third party, and hopefully someone who's part of a dynamic, growing, shifting city similar to our demographics that are shifting, that has achieved some exciting stuff, that we want to have that unbiased sort of view, to take a look at our programs. I mean, we feel very nostalgic about them as well, and everybody has their program. I know Ryan, you know, because he's so involved with the seniors, you know, I think when we first started talking about this, there was this, oh no, are we going to lose Dial-A-Ride? Are we going to, you know, we want to enhance service, not take service away. And right now, I think that internally, we've been only able to look with the lens of constraints, because we know why Thursday is the only program currently. We know what's happening with the drivers and the B license and everything else. And so we want to understand that, but have sort of an external view that says, okay, I see that, but we also know this that you don't know. And that's really what's motivating this outside. Because if we sit down, we're going to increment, and we're going to deal with the constraints we know. If we take somebody from the outside who's impartial and who's seen exciting new things, then we're going to get a completely different lens, I think. And it may be as simple as shifting. Did you know if you did this city over in this you know, county did this, you could maximize the resource completely differently than what you have today. So that's really the thinking behind let's get outside help.
Okay.
What, Julie, your question, how many Dr. Dial-A-Rides? Was 11 in October. Is that what, was that your question? Or was that not?
Yeah, and I guess we just lump them all into a Thursday and say, you've got to make your appointment then. You know, I was just wondering if there would be more ridership if that program was a little expanded to where, you know, okay, it's Tuesday and Thursday. Now we have 22 people that have doctor's appointments.
Oh, I'm certain there would be more ridership. I think, too, with scheduling appointments, it impacts the program because some people need to be dropped off in the morning. Some are having afternoon appointments. So at times it doesn't work, and we have to work around what schedules are going to work. So if we had an additional day, that would work. But we are still, our drivers, we have a shortage of drivers, and that would possibly impact another program. Maybe it impacts Dial-A-Ride. So we can only offer it one day right now.
Okay.
Kelly, you want to make the motion?
Yes. Where's the language? I motion.
Number 2, right?
Oh, is it in the, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. I motion to retain a consultant to complete a study and provide recommendations which will enhance the City of El Segundo's transportation program.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
That's 4-0. So this will now go to council, and they'll make a decision if we can hire out a consultant. Is that correct?
We have the authority to hire out the consultant,
Oh,
at
you
least
do?
initially,
Okay.
yep. We have some budget set aside for contract services, which we'll use initially. And if we need to expand upon that, then we'll take it to council.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we are going to go to reports. Aquatic Subcommittee.
Okay, so Lee's not here. He was prepared to deliver a report. We met
Yes,
Just the once?
Last.
Or have we met twice
Twice.
this month? We've met twice this month. We have been mostly focused on the criteria for success. We have received feedback from some of the user groups about how the criteria for success is designed, and we are working with Arisea to draft, or to modify the criteria for success to make it make more sense for our user groups, given the feedback we've received.
Okay,
All right?
thank you. Gateway Committee.
Gateway Committee, we've taken a bit of a break instead of meeting every 2 weeks. And that's because the packets have gone out to it was top five that we have sent packets to for them to now come back with their designs. And we will be meeting in January to see the presentations.
Thank you. Golf Course Subcommittee. There wasn't a meeting. Transportation Subcommittee.
So we've met also twice, first to work on the vision and the idea of the consultant, and then more recently, we met to, and we have been contemplating an awards program for both employers and individuals in El Segundo to come up with transportation ideas or best practices that are happening so that we could share that from a social media perspective and get other people, and hopefully spark some other ideas from other employers and other people. So in progress on that idea at the moment.
Okay, thank you. The Youth Sports Council did not meet sometime in January. Department staff reports. Arisea.
Just a couple of announcements. The Spelling Bee is going to be, they're performing. We will have a drama show. So they would have come tonight to give you a little snippet, but they are actually having dress rehearsal tonight, so they couldn't make it in to give you a little piece of the performance. But please come down. I know you have the flyer in your packets, hopefully, so you have all the times and the dates for this weekend. We also have tree lighting coming up on December 5th. I cannot believe it is already here, but do not miss it. We would love to see your faces out there. My report is here. There are some corrections I want to go over real quick. The tables for the aquatics should say August, September, October, not July, August, and September, so please make those corrections. Also, in looking at the numbers for Hilltop, there shouldn't be any numbers in the last column. It says 3 and 71 to equal 74. Hilltop was not open at that time. Those numbers were keyed in incorrectly in Civic Rec, and they actually ended up in the table. They should have been plunge numbers, so those numbers should be added into the plunge numbers. So those are just some corrections that I noticed in going through this report. I was on my way to a conference trying to get this to Jackie, and yeah, that's what happens when you rush, so I apologize for that. Are there any questions?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Christopher Henson, Parks Maintenance Superintendent.
Good evening. You have my report. I'll take any questions. The only update I have is it rained today, so that's a good thing.
It is a good thing, unless you want to play baseball.
Right.
Okay, thank you. Department Director's Report. Meredith.
Yes, thank you very much. So you have our new recreation activity guide in front of you. We're really pleased with this new magazine-style publication, trying to, if you recall, probably more than 10 years ago now, we used to have something similar to this. At that time, it got direct mailed to everybody, but we're hoping that people view it online, come by our facilities and pick one up. We have plenty available at all of the facilities here at City Hall and at the library. So we look forward to getting the feedback from the community on this, and we feel that this really gives us an opportunity to showcase a lot more of what the department does than just with the limited space that we had available in the Herald. I want to thank the team that was involved in this. It was Darren, Ryan, Linnea, Holly. I think we're the key folks here on this team. very creative, very very much focused on the detail, and they all went out, took photos, and it's really exciting to see our photos of our actual activities and community members in here. So don't be surprised if you see some familiar faces, and we look forward to just expanding on this style of publication moving forward. So also, you saw in my report that Darren Yule has accepted a position with the City of Culver City. He's going to be a recreation manager over there, returning to the city where he came to us from. So that's always good when somebody recruits you back over. So congratulations to him. We'll miss him, but I just wanted to thank him for all of his hard work up at the clubhouse. He's really made a difference with our summer camp program and our youth drama program. And then recognize Enrique. Enrique in the Parks Division is our acting maintenance crafts worker right now, working with Sean on catching up on some of the much-needed facility and park maintenance activities that we don't always get to. So replacing slides and sinks and faucets and little things that kind of never make it to the very top of the priority list when we have such a long list. So they're working really hard. I want to congratulate Kike and wish him well in this interim opportunity that he has. We are fine-tuning that job description, and we'll be going back out for recruitment on that position in the coming months. Also wanted to mention that this year we've made the decision that we're going to be lighting up the 100-foot Christmas tree in Library Park again. Over the last 9 or 10 years, we've had an event sponsorship program and been really lucky to have a lot of great supporters in the community. And so over the portion of these many years that we've had the program, we've accumulated a good amount of funds that allow us to enhance specific events and activities. We really focus on special events. So when we want a particular band that's maybe over our general fund budget, we tap into that and get a better quality entertainment. Or if we need a new sound system or stage or things of that nature. And over the years, we've gotten a lot of feedback, well, particularly since the centennial, when we lit up Library Park, and then last year we tried a little bit of a crowdfunding effort. This year we want to thank the community and thank our sponsors and just bring back that holiday spirit. So you should see that light up. I won't tell you when. It'll be a surprise. But we look forward to the community's response to that.
Any questions?
Maybe add a tree? Is there a way to add a tree? Add another tree? Like, because the 100-foot tree looks cool, but it's just like the one tree.
Oh, yeah.
Should we expand?
We got a whole plan.
Nice.
So are you gonna let people know so that we can get people out to it, or is it just gonna send one?
We
big
will. We
list?
will. Yeah. We will send the message out when we have a date that we know for certain.
I think the new brochure looks great. I think the photos and the graphics and just the presentation of it is great. One thing I was trying to look through quickly, I think, again, it was forgotten about the low-income assistance in here. I don't see it.
We have that in there.
It
It's
is.
in the community services section on page 9.
Page 9, okay.
It's like, please put that in there.
Okay, the scholarships?
Yes.
Okay, all right, thank you. And no longer going to be mailing to the house or putting in the Herald. Are you going to maybe track and see how many of these are actually picked up? Because, you know, if we're printing all these and putting them around different places and people aren't picking them up, you know, it may behoove us to put it back in the Herald again. And so I like to, I mean, even though, you know, my son is older and we're not signing up for the classes, but I still like to get these at home and look through them. And I think, you know, there's a lot of people that may not take the opportunity to go and pick one up.
Sure.
So I think that we ought to track that.
Yeah, we definitely can, and we've brainstormed a few different ideas internally. There will be an insert, a flyer in the Herald tomorrow that'll come out of your newspaper, and it'll at least say, hey, there's a change, the brochure is now available, these are where you can pick it up. We've also added language in there that if somebody wants to give us a call, we'll throw it in the mail to them. We've also talked about maybe starting a mailing list, that we can actually have a mailing list. Basically, somebody could subscribe and we then could mail it to you every time. So we're probably over the next course of the few seasons, be adjusting how many we get printed as we see how many people actually pick up the hard copy.
Because are these going to be like available at the schools and the preschools and things like that
Yeah,
as well?
that's exactly our plan, is to get those out there.
And online.
And online. We've ordered enough to where we can see in a couple weeks, but still before classes, if we need to send them directly, you know, in the kids' backpacks, things like that. But we'll be fine tuning that distribution plan probably over the first couple quarters.
Okay, yeah, I think they're very nice.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner comments. Commissioner Watson.
Okay, so first of all, I wanted to thank you folks again for the shade canopies at campus. They're all installed now, and they're wonderful, and we've had tremendous feedback about how, especially the last couple weeks because it's been so hot, how they've really helped keep it a little bit cooler. So thank you. That was an immense project, and it's really exciting to see them up, and to see something that we envisioned a few years ago kind of come to fruition is really exciting. So thank you. Second, I always like to share something about Parks and Rec that I've been reading, and I found this study called The Health and Social Benefits of Recreation. It was done by the state of California. And I wanted to put it out there because it talks about the fact that as a nation, we're heading towards a more sedentary lifestyle, and that is contributing to many of our health and social issues, but how recreation and parks have actually made such a big positive community impact on individuals, improving physical activity, improving emotional, mental health, and quality of life. And so I point this out because I do think that we have this fabulous resource, and that we are one of sort of the few communities in California that have so much green space and have such a robust calendar of parks and recreation opportunities. And so I wanted to put out a challenge. I thought, okay, so first of all, my kids showed me how to do a hashtag, right? Okay, so I created this hashtag, Get Outside ES. Okay, so Get Outside El Segundo. And I just wanted to put out a challenge to everyone to do one thing differently this next month, and post it to the IG. Is that how you say that, right?
What's the IG?
Instagram.
Oh, okay. I don't know.
Really
I don't
dating
do those
myself here,
hashtags,
right?
so I
Ask
don't
your
know.
kids. All right. So whether that be take a class, add a walk to your weekly routine, replace one car trip in the village with a walk, or with, take a basket, go to the grocery store, or even just visit a green space, Memory Row, any of our parks, just go someplace new. So that's the challenge I wanted to put out.
Challenge accepted.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Snowden.
Send me a picture and I'll post it, or I'll get my kids to.
Sorry to see Darren go, even though he's going back to the city where he came from, but I think he was doing a great job here with the programs, and hopefully we'll be able to get a replacement that is as good as he has been. But I'm sorry to see him go. Also, I wanted to bring up Twisted Tales that happened for Halloween. It was a lot of work for Rotary Club and for the city and for the Masons, but I think it was very successful. And I think everybody that attended had a good time. I worked 2 different nights, the children's night, and some of the little kids were crying and crying and crying, and we were telling them it's not going to be scary at all. And one little boy was holding his hand, trying to get him to go through, and he was like, nope, can't do it. And, and then there were those kids that were just filling up their bags, trick-or-treating through the thing. And all of the volunteers, and there were so many teenagers that were volunteering. There was one girl that had like a great scream that was, I think it was Alice. She was a great screamer. So I think it was very successful, and like I said, it was a lot of work, but a lot of people were talking about it. So, and it was all over social media, and so I'm glad that the city partnered with us and I say accepted the challenge.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Lubes.
It's probably the wrong time to ask this question, maybe, but is it something that is going to be done next year? Has there been a meeting, a post-meeting to assess and do all that stuff?
Yeah, we've had a first wrap-up meeting with the club presidents and some staff members. I think everybody is definitely willing to give it another go. I mean, we have the investment from the two clubs that they made on the equipment and the materials. It would probably be a real shame to not put that to use again. So we talked a little bit about Teen Center as a venue and are there other options out there, and fine-tuning the pricing and fine-tuning the number of days. So there's definitely some changes that'll be made, but as a first year, everybody's really thrilled.
Do the Joslin Center next year. Just kidding. That's all. Happy Thanksgiving. I have nothing.
Okay, thank you. The only thing is, please thank Darren for us, all of us, and the community. And we'll miss him, but good luck to him. And go back to public communications. Seeing none, we'll close public communications, and we'll adjourn to the next regular meeting on Wednesday, December 18th, 2019, at 6 p.m. Thank you.